August Lunch and Learn. We work on 4 main topics: age and dementia-friendly communities, housing and transportation. We've had our 4 lunch and learns this year, one focused on all of them. Today's transportation. And then coming on October 12th, Lynn is going to be, who is right here, second half with Lynn Winston, is going to be talking about, is that dementia friendly, Lynn? Yep. We also have morning networking meetings every other month on the second Wednesdays at 8:30 in the morning. And the next one of those is on September 14th. I'll be giving an update on the Purple Line bus rapid transit, and we'll be having a little discussion on that, also transportation, and then breaking out into small groups. But today we are happy to have Andy here, and Strisik, is that about right? All right. And Andy's, according to his email, uses he, his pronouns, as do I, and is the manager of customer service, customer service Metro Mobility. Metro Mobility, which we all pretty much know, shared ride public transportation service for certified riders who are unable to use regular fixed route buses due to either disability or health condition. And they provide trips for any purpose. I got that off your website, Andy, so I'm hoping it's correct. And I will now turn it over to you.
All right, John, thanks for having me. It is good to be here, and I appreciate you reaching out through Sheila and getting this set up. Whenever I talk about Metro Mobility at all, I really do want to start at that public transit piece, because really, without looking at it through that lens, none of what we do makes any sense. So I want to start there and hit that. I do also want to say that I anticipate that there won't be a ton of new stuff for folks here. I think, you know, looking at who's on, that a lot of this will be review, but if there are questions you guys have, feel free to interrupt. I want this to be conversational in nature. I'll keep my eye on the screen. If you got your camera on, you want to raise your hand, that's fine too. Otherwise, just go ahead and blurt stuff out. But yeah, we are a version of the city bus, and that really is where I've got to start. We are just a version of the city bus for folks who can't always take more conventional fixed route because of the symptoms of their disabilities. Title II of the ADA obviously says that every service the government provides has got to be accessible to folks with disabilities. Clearly, one service the government provides here regionally is Metro Transit and other fixed route busing. So that is why Metro Mobility is necessitated under Title II to be kind of that accessible version of the public transit system that the government provides access to regionally. So that said, that is what we are from a federal perspective, where we are matching the purpose and scope of what Metro Transit and other fixed route stuff does. So that is to say that federal, what they call ADA paratransit element of our service is we go where the city bus goes, where the regular non-express city bus goes. We go there when they go there, and we can be utilized for all the same reasons that the city bus can be utilized, which is to say you can use it for whatever you want. And not only can you use Metro Mobility for whatever you want, the thing that sometimes caregivers and support teams struggle with is that we cannot prioritize trips based on destination purpose. You know, 2 people might be on the same bus, one going to kidney dialysis and the other one going to the bar, and the person that gets dropped off first is going to be based entirely on spatial trip routing, not on the relative perceived importance of the 2 trips or anything like that, just like is the case on the city bus. We go in terms of our Monday through Friday ADA service area, roughly west to east from like Mount to Stillwater. north to south from the city of Anoka down into Lakeville. So we've got a pretty wide Metro Mobility service area. Again, each one of those communities' hours of service are different to match where the city bus serves their area. So if you're traveling within the urban core of St. Paul and Minneapolis, Metmo runs 24 hours because the city bus runs 24 hours within almost all of St. Paul and Minneapolis proper. If you're out in a third tier suburb, maybe there's no service after 8 p.m. Or no service after 4 p.m. on the weekends because the city bus serves at a similar level. I'm mentioning the federal component of our service because Metro Mobility thankfully does more than that. All of our rules are the same mostly for the service in terms of how it works, but we have our federally mandated ADA service area, and then we have a broader state mandated portion of our service area, which is roughly a third of the suburban and exurban communities that we serve. Those are areas where the city bus does not run, but they are part of the transportation taxing district and were in 2006 with the exception of Lakeville, which was added on after the fact. But for those, we provide a similar level of service, but they are not federally mandated. And the two biggest differences are if your trip is within the federally mandated ADA service area and you call to book a trip, you get the pickup time right then and there. And I'll get into some more specifics there in a minute. But when you call, if it's a federally mandated trip, you get the time that the bus is going to be scheduled to be there as the negotiated pickup time. With the trips that are not federally mandated, those get put on standby, and the contractor will call the customer back the day before the trip and let them know when the bus is going to be there. There are times, unfortunately, and those times include now, where because of exceptional circumstances, some non-ADA trips, some non-federally mandated trips get denied. Right now, the driver for that is driver shortage. Just like, industry-wide, drivers are really hard to come by. I see a question here popping up about how transportation changed during the pandemic. I can speak to that, but I will add, we are kind of back to our normal now, but I will talk to you about the changes that were in place, but are no longer in place. We are working hard to avoid having to deny any trips, both coaching our contractors on how to make the best use of existing resources, and also paying drivers more to try to recruit more drivers. That is helping, and we think that once we get our current crop of new hires that were spearheaded by the funding increase that we got through the council, once we get those folks trained, we are hopeful that we can stop denying trips. But right now, some non-ADA trips are getting denied because we just don't have enough drivers right now. Before I lose it, I'll quickly hop on what we did during the pandemic in response to the pandemic. We necessitated masks for a time period until that was struck down by a federal judge. We limited the shared ride nature of our service as much as possible. And because our demand fell so much during the vast majority of the pandemic, we were almost always able to provide a non-shared ride experience. So that was really our goal for much of the previous stages of the current pandemic, was to provide a non-shared ride. That is no longer the case, that we can do that. Our demand is up around 85% of normal, pre-pandemic normal. And it had been down around 20% at its lowest. We began doing one thing that we're for sure going to keep doing, and that's we implemented what's called a curbside ride, where because banks were closed other than drive-throughs, and some dispensaries and even pharmacies were closed for a while for walk-in public, but you could just call and somebody would bring out your script or your medication. What we did, rather than forcing customers to book a go ride and then a separate return ride, they can request one curbside ride a day, where it is still 2 trips. They pay 2 fares, but they're both on the same bus, and the bus just waits for up to 20 minutes. So they will go, they will, drop off the rider, but they will just wait there. The customer, as long as they're back on the bus for their return trip within 20 minutes, will just pay the fare for their return ride and get on the bus and go. That's worked really well for customers with shorter trips, if they just need to run in someplace and grab something. So we are leaving that in place. We did find that we have to limit it to 1 a day, because we have a very savvy customer base. And what we ended up having people do is book half a dozen curbside rides and essentially commandeer a bus for a day, which we can't maintain system wide. So we do have to limit it to 1, but we're pleased to do it. We think it is a great benefit to our customers that answers a complaint that we've had a long time pre-pandemic. If I know I'm only going to be here 5 minutes, how come I have to sit and wait an hour for my bus to come back? From a federal standpoint, that's a pretty easy question to answer, right? It's just like the city bus. Even if you're going someplace for 15 minutes, you might have to go back to that bus stop and have an hour in transit on your return trip by the time you walk back to the bus stop and wait for your bus, take your bus trip. It's public transit. But from a pure customer service standpoint, it's nice to be able to be more responsive than that and offer this. And it seems to be working pretty well for the contractor. There is an operational benefit where instead of trying to find a good fit for a separate bus to come back and pick up this person and no show them if they're not done, and then send a third bus back to go get them. The customer's there, they have had contact with the driver, and it's one bus that's waiting for a short period of time, coming back and get the passengers. So that seems to be a nice win-win for folks that we did put in place because of the pandemic. We transported healthcare workers to their medical facilities so that they could help treat people with COVID. That was something we were able to do for a lot of the previous stages of the pandemic. We have since stopped in order to protect capacity for our actual constituency. But for a while, that was something we were able to do. We are still, as of now, although this is probably fairly short-lived at this point, we're still doing grocery and household item runs, where rather than bringing customers to the store, if they can place orders at their store to be picked up, we will run into the grocer or the hardware store and get their stuff and bring it to them. That's probably on its way out, given things like store to door and other services that sort of fill that niche. That is not obviously our core function, but it's something we had the capacity to do. So we've been doing it, partnered with counties to do the same thing with food shelves during the pandemic, where we were going to food shelves and organizing food shelf delivery for food shelves that could not manage that. We're transporting PCAs for a brief period in addition to healthcare workers. And we did not let anybody expire. That's probably the other biggest thing is eligibility typically lasts 1 to 4 years for Metro Mobility, and then people have to recertify. We haven't had anybody recertify for, about 3 years now. Throughout the pandemic, we closed our offices to the public. We're not conducting in-person eligibility assessments. So we didn't think it made sense to require people to recertify, send papers to an empty office or nearly empty office, and have us deal with that. So all of those things, or almost all those things now, are kind of back to normal. People have all been grandparented in. If they were certified at the start of the pandemic, they're currently certified and will be until January 1st of this year, so that they have time to get paperwork in to get recertified. But that's about where we're at. The other thing we started doing in response to the pandemic is we started doing some virtual assessments. Many of our eligibility assessments do require an in-person component, either to do, in the case of a developmental disability, something called the FACS, or Functional Assessment of Cognitive Transit Skills, which is like a simulated bus trip. Some require a physical element in person, either a walk where an evaluator is looking at gait disturbances, trunk sway, and how you do going uphill and crossing 2-lane and 4-lane streets and those types of things. But if we are certifying people whose symptoms fluctuate, say you've got dementia or a TBI or arthritis in your knees, where you have good days and bad days, that's a good example of something where we would be able to do really a virtual assessment, where we can do a Teams call or a WebEx call similar to this, and talk to a person. And if we know that a person's symptoms fluctuate that way, that's probably where the assessment ends, because there's nothing that we're going to document on a given day that is going to prove that they could take the city bus on a day where maybe their symptoms are a little bit more intrusive. So we try to schedule those virtual assessments where we can. Cuts down on customers needing to come into the office, and that seems to be going over well. Saw a question about how many vehicles. There are, let's see here, system-wide, about 700 of them. Our 3 contractors, or I guess 4 contracts if you count the agency service. 2, 4, about 650 drivers right now. We'd like to see that closer to 750. But we're working on it. Saw a question pop up. What other changes do we see coming? Hard to say here. This is very much going to be some heavy lifting for about the next year as we reacclimate customers into the norm. One of the other things we had done while we had the capacity to do so was we quit suspending for no-show activity. Really, the main driver, for me at least, as a customer service manager, for suspending for no-shows is the negative impact that it has on other customers, and the lateness of their rides, the length of their rides, that kind of thing. With our capacity, or rather our demand so reduced, no-shows didn't have the same negative impact on other customers. Still a big financial impact. In fact, given since our productivity fell during the pandemic with lower ridership, our federal subsidy per ride rate went way up. Not federal subsidy, our actual cost per ride went way up. So, a one-way ride for Metro Mobility pre-pandemic cost about $25 one way, all things considered. And, now it's more like a little over $45, which still is around or just under the federal average for a pre-pandemic paratransit one-way ride. The nationwide, the average is about $50 per one-way trip pre-pandemic. So, we did pretty well with our subsidy here. We were about half of what the national average was pre-pandemic. We think we'll probably get back there. Um, saw something pop up about contractor pay and benefits. The pay thing is true, or has been historically. There's been good strides. They're starting now right around $20 an hour. 15 years ago, you could make more at Arby's than you could driving paratransit to start. I think that's no longer the case. So we're moving in the right direction there. They do all offer benefits to varying degrees. Some of our contracts are union shops, some are not, but even the ones that are not do offer, healthcare benefits, PTO, seniority-based wage increases, those types of things. And we have required those in recent years in an effort to address driver shortage issues. So pay is less of a problem than it once was, for sure. Pay and competitive benefit packages, particularly just within the last few months, we got an additional approval through the council to amend the contracts to give more money for drivers and reservationists. I'm not sure everybody knows all the different ways you can book a ride, so I'll drop into that quick. Obviously, the most conventional way is to call your provider, your contractor, on the phone, still how most people do it. But there are a couple of different ways that you can do that too. There's an online booking app that you can register for through contacting the service center, where customers can book, cancel, check their rides all online. That's true for ADA and non-ADA trips, although if you book a non-ADA one, just like if you call, it'll put you on standby, and then reservationists will call you back. But for customers who are capable of booking their own rides, or for customers who need reminders because of some memory issues and like to be able to go in and look at their rides rather than sit on hold, waiting to talk to a reservationist about it. And by the time you talk to somebody, we got customers who forget what they were going to ask because they were sitting on hold. So we recognize that's been an issue. We have heard good things about the online trip booking option for that, for just having a calendar where you can see your rides for the day. You can email ride bookings if you don't want to use the app, or if you're not savvy with apps or websites. We have one email for each of our 3 primary zones. Our west zone is wreservations, plural, at METC for Metropolitan Council .state.mn.us. Same thing for the south zone, S reservations, and then for the east zone, E reservations. You can email rides that way. We've got even some deaf-blind customers who have some vision, who don't have screen reader technology, who fax us bookings too. They just put 16-point Arial black font, book rides that way, and get confirmation back that way. So we work with folks as much as possible. Obviously, for any folks who are at similar fast tracks on the technology superhighway to me, we also offer TTY booking still. If people want to go old school and use the TTY to book rides, that's fine. I mentioned already that Metro Mobility is for folks who can't use the city bus at least sometimes because of their disability. I'll flush that out a little bit more here with what we mean by can't use the city bus because of their disability, and what we mean by at least sometimes. Really what we're looking at, and this is under federal law, we're looking at 3 different criteria for whether or not you're eligible for Metro Mobility. And one is, can you navigate the regional fixed route system independently? So once you're on the bus, can you use it successfully getting around where you need to get to? So we're looking at stuff there like, do you have a developmental disability that limits maybe your landmark recognition skills, your memory recall skills, those types of things. Or are you blind and not familiar with particular runs, where if you're going someplace new, maybe you can't see to recognize where to get off the bus. We all know that calling out stops and call enunciators are not fail-proof on the city bus, and drivers aren't always clear as a manual backup for those when they're calling out stops. So pretty much anybody totally blind is going to be eligible under that one too. The second thing we would look at after navigation is whether or not you can get to and from a bus stop by yourself in an area that has fixed route service. Area that has fixed route service is defined as within 3/4 of a mile of the city bus where it runs. So like if you circled a 3/4 mile corridor around where the city bus is running, that's what we would expect you to reasonably be able to do in order to access the system. So important there because, say that you are a person with a disability who has neuropathy in your feet and you can only walk 3 blocks, but the bus stop you have to get to is about 4.5 blocks away, then we can certify you based on that need. Let's say you have neuropathy in your feet, but you're able to walk 9 blocks, but you live in an area that doesn't have fixed route service, so you would have to walk 2 miles to get to a bus stop. We cannot get you certified based on that. The fact that you live outside of an area that has public transit service is not something we can utilize to get somebody certified for Metro Mobility. It really is about if the bus did run in your area, again, area being defined as within 3/4 of a mile or about 9 blocks, could you access it? Could you go 9 blocks independently? If the answer to that is yes, then we couldn't use that one to get you certified regardless of whether or not there is a bus that meets your needs. Then the third eligibility component is a little outdated now, because again, this is before buses were fitted with lifts to comply with the ADA. But if a person can't get on and off the bus by themselves, we can use that to get them certified. While rare, we still can use that one because we're talking about each individual's current level of functioning. So if I've got Parkinson's and I can't make it up the stairs of a bus, but I'm also not stable enough to safely ride the lift alone, then I could get certified for Metro Mobility, because our drivers, do provide an escort and can help stabilize me on the lift, get me up there so that I can stand on the lift and get on the bus that way. I mentioned already when I was talking about virtual ones, but we do in-person assessments when necessary. Our application, as I'm sure all of you are aware, has kind of 2 parts. There's a self-reporting element called the certification questionnaire, and then the professional verification form, which is where a medical professional or other professional speaks to the diagnosis. Given that information, our paratransit evaluators with an OT PT background will look at those related to fixed route travel and whether or not we have enough information on the printed app to say, yeah, it's definitely the case that this person can't take transit sometimes. And if we can get them certified just based on the paper app, we will. If we need to document stuff further, we'll schedule an assessment. That at least sometimes, again, is an important piece, and it speaks to how each region is going to have different eligibility for individuals. Here in Minnesota, I don't care if you're Charles Atlas, you know, with your upper body. If you're in a wheelchair, you're pretty much in, because if I'm going to work in my chair taking the bus and the plow comes through and buries all the curb cuts, you know, then I'm not getting to work that day on the city bus, you know. So you're in. There's going to be some times where it's totally reasonable to assume that even if I have an otherwise accessible path of travel with curb cuts and a city bus that I can get to in my chair, I'm not going to be able to do that sometimes just because of the weather. If I lived in Florida, I might not be eligible for their version of paratransit. So again, it really is a situational case-by-case thing. Again, similar with disabilities that fluctuate. Just because you can take the city bus sometimes doesn't mean you can take it all the time. You know, if you've got intractable seizures and that's your disability, you're probably fine, or may well be fine to take the city bus the vast majority of the time. But you know, if you have a seizure and you're disoriented and don't know where you are, and your seizures are not currently controlled by medication, we can use that to get you certified, because we know obviously that you're at risk of not successfully completing your trip independently on the city bus if you get on the bus to go someplace and have a seizure. Saw something pop up about how long does it typically take to get certified. Under federal law, we got to get it done within 21 days of completing the application process. So either receiving the paper application if we're not doing an application, or within 21 days of doing the in-person assessment. We're not taking that long. We're, you know, a week and a half right now is about what it's taken between when we get the app and when we get somebody certified. We got about 55,000 currently certified riders. Saw that question pop up. Pre-pandemic, about 25,000 of those were riding at least yearly. You know, we got lots of people who get certified and then don't typically use the system, but if their accessible van breaks down, they might use it, or it's a just in case thing. And we, you know, frankly, we don't track that well if someone gets certified and then passes away. If we do offer some permanent certification for folks who are never capable of taking the city bus and over 65. So we have about 55,000 currently certified individuals. Pre-pandemic, about 25,000 regular riders. During the pandemic, you know, that fell to more like, well, fell very low earlier, but now we're at about 18,000 active riders right now. Yeah, that's right. We do not go to the afterlife to pick up and go to Sunray. So that the afterlife is definitely outside of our service area. Let's see here. You can bring along PCAs for free on Metro Mobility. You can also bring along guests, but guests pay the same fare as the customer, which is $4.50 each way during rush hour. Same rush hours as the city bus, $3.50 during non-rush. Each rider has the right to bring along one PCA and one guest. So you have the right to bring along up to 2 other passengers. You may be able to bring along more if there is space available. I mentioned conduct suspensions. You know, if there's a behavior that poses a risk to others or prevents successful operation of the service, you can get suspended. We largely stopped doing that during the pandemic. Still suspended people for violent or intentionally disruptive behavior, but stopped our biggest pool of suspensions, which was no-shows. We are back suspending for no-shows again now, and what the rule is basically, if the bus arrives within the pickup window, you've got 5 minutes to get to the bus. If you are not there at the pickup time, then that would be a no-show. If you get 4 no-shows within a rolling 30-day period, you'll be suspended. Suspensions, the first one goes 2 weeks. Second one goes 30 days, second and after, within a rolling 365-day period, would go 30 days. You can appeal those if you want, if you think there's extenuating circumstances, or if you think they're beyond your control. Oversleeping because you forgot to set your alarm, not beyond your control, but things like I was on kidney dialysis and I couldn't get off the machine because I was bleeding. Or I went to go downstairs and the elevator in my building was broken. Stuff like that, where we can document that and get something from your building super or get something from the clinic. My staff will try to excuse those before it gets to a suspension. But if it does fall through the cracks, people can appeal. And I want to be, real clear here, at least within the ADA service area, these rides are a civil right, so we recognize that and take it seriously. We're not doing anybody any favors, doing these rides. We understand that, this is a civil right to people, and we take that access to the community very seriously. I can go in and talk a bit about TransitLink now if people want, or I can talk some more. I think there's a couple more in chat I should get to first. Do people feel pretty comfortable about the pickup window and negotiation window, or should I speak to that a little bit?
Well, I'm looking, it's 12:42. We're due to be out of here at 1, and Scott is on his magic bus and is going to be doing some stuff on that. If you want to just hit the high points, and we've been answering questions as we roll. So.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Probably a little under 10% of the cost we recover from fares. We don't partner a lot with other transportation services other than obviously our contractors are all non-council employees. So we partner with those ones, obviously, that we've contracted with through a competitive RFP process. And then there are times when we function as a feeder to the fixed route for people who can take shorter fixed route buses. If they want to do that, they can do that through us. Or we sometimes partner with TransitLink. If someone's certified with Metro Mobility, TransitLink can bring somebody within the Metro Mobility service area, transfer them to us, and then we would complete the rest of their trip. Which brings me to TransitLink. I'll be real quick with that because I don't work for them and I don't have a lot of information to share. They are kind of the opposite of us in that we go where the city bus goes when the city bus goes there. They go where the city bus doesn't go. So they are really designed to be that feeder to fixed route thing where they are taking people from rural or exurban areas into the Metro Transit service area so that they can get a ride on the city bus or Metro Mobility. TransitLink is general public, so you don't have to apply. Similar buses to Metro Mobilities, so they're all lift equipped. It's a Monday through Friday service though, and runs from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So really daytime, weekday business hours in scope. Unlike Metro Mobility, it's a curb to curb service. So Metmo drivers will see you inside that first door of your destination and help you from the exterior door of your pickup location to the bus. That doesn't happen on TransitLink. They drop you at the curb, they pick you up at the curb. On the Mo, you've got 5 minutes, I think I mentioned, to get out to the bus. On TransitLink, it's 3 minutes. So again, they're really expecting people to be out waiting, I think, on TransitLink, either outside or at the door. In order to be eligible, I mentioned you got to be outside the city bus service area to qualify for TransitLink. They define that variably based on time of year. If you're just a fourth of a mile outside, the city bus service area from November to March. You can book that ride on TransitLink. It goes to a half mile April through October in order to book a ride on TransitLink. Their fares are the same as ours, it looks like. So $4.50 during rush hours, $3.50 during non-rush. And I think that's about it. I told Scott that I would try to give him at least 15 minutes. So I'm almost did it. Certainly, if anybody has questions, they can shoot me an email.
All right, so I can find your email and put it in the chat there, Andy.
In fact, I'm just typing it as we speak.
There we go.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Andy. Thank you for the service and what you've been able to continue to do and keep things running. Good luck on hiring drivers.
Thanks
Scott's going to
much.
do away with that need, though. Isn't that true, Scott? So Scott is, I'm going to put you on here. I'm just going to briefly mention Scott works with Nutrax. One of the things that Nutrax does is fill transportation gaps in our community. Transportation services for people with disabilities, seniors, municipal organizations, and local companies are part of what Nutrax does. And there's something new at Nutrax. So hit it. All to you, sir.
Hey, thanks, John. And Andy, I don't know if you're still on, but on behalf of class, thank you for presenting today. Wealth of information, and I know that this recording, once it goes out to some of our senior service providers, they will appreciate getting some of those details to perhaps share with their clients. So thank you again.
Yeah, really glad to do it. Thanks for inviting me and thanks for helping me set it up this morning.
You bet. Well, we are on a fun project here, and I will be turning my phone around shortly, but we are on the Bear Tracks automated vehicle, which just started operation. We're in our second official week now, and I'm actually en route as we speak. And it's going at 12 miles an hour. So I've been able to view a couple nice lawns at a much slower pace than if I would have been driving this route. So because we're recording it, I feel I'll get a little technical early just to get some of the details out about the automated vehicle. But this is a project that's been in the making for several years now. And with kind of the leadership of MnDOT getting this started and our involvement with University of Minnesota, White Bear Lake School District, the YMCA, Navia, AECOM, just a number of partners in this project that finally were able to get this to fruition. So what this is a year-long data collection opportunity for an automated vehicle. And this is I believe it's either the second or third project in Minnesota that's being worked on. The first one was down in the Rochester area. And what we will be doing throughout the year is, with Minnesota, as we all know, the 4 different seasons we have can wreak havoc on transportation. And being able to have a source in a project like this to map this data out, I think is pretty important to go through all these seasons. And this automated vehicle is just filled with cameras and sensors, and it really is the science of tomorrow, quite honestly, that's actually here today. And this next year of collecting data is going to help map out the future of where automated vehicles go, from testing stops to, a squirrel running across or heavy snow coming across the sensors. All of these things will play a very big part in how this data is collected and analyzed. And right now, because it's automated, we still have an operator. And what I'm going to do at this time is I'm actually just going to turn my camera around here, and you're going to get more of a forward view of where we're going. And I'm going to show, this is Randy and this is Trevor. And these two gentlemen are the operators for the automated vehicle. And the reason we have an operator is because this is an ADA compliant vehicle. So we have their assistance in the event that somebody in a wheelchair wishes to ride. They will be here to assist. We actually have a ramp system here that when we get to our next stop, we can show you how that works. And right now we are approaching the YMCA, which is one of the main pickup areas for people wishing to ride this vehicle. And Randy, and as an operator, and Trevor also have to override things. If there's a car that jumps in front or something that causes this to stop abruptly, then they can engage this system here. I don't know if you can see it. It looks like it's an actual, like an Xbox controller. And when we drive this manually, that is how this vehicle is steered and operated. And there's a screen up on the side that gives a whole lot of detail and visuals that on the override manual process, they're able to read and identify. As we keep moving here, hopefully I'm not shaking this too much. Am I making anybody car sick?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, good. This is kind of fun though. It's a beautiful day out here. So happy that we can ride and experience it. So now we are approaching the YMCA, and this is, I think we're pretty close to being, this is the last run. So once we're going to do another round here as I'm talking through this, and that will complete the run for the day. As we are talking about what the loop is, oh, that's interesting. There's a gentleman that just walked right in front, and so the vehicle stops, and he's looking inside, and we start and we stop. So we come across that often. If something stops this, it is an abrupt stop. But the route that we take is between the YMCA and two senior communities in the White Bear Lake area here, just along Orchard, the Boulders, and Willow Apartments. We also stop at PAI, which is a DTNH, day training and habilitation program. And so those four stops are the complete loop. We operate probably every 30 to 35 minutes, a complete run here. Now we've stopped, the doors automatically open. Randy is gonna just deploy the ramp here so you can see if we had somebody in a wheelchair looking to board. That ramp will come out. As it finds its stable ground, it'll hit a stop and then it'll raise up to make it a good type of fit for a wheelchair to come on. Thanks, Randy. So that's one little piece of it there. And this is a project, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to go until July of 2023. And at that point, we're not certain exactly what will happen, if this will become engaged in another project in the area, or if this will take itself back to the science department and continue work on more of the automated things that take place for the next wave of the future vehicle. The shuttles route, we're about 1.5 miles long. As I mentioned, the stops that we make, it is free for the public to ride. So if you have an ability to get to any of these stops, you can ride along just to see what it's all about and take part in this new venture here. We've actually had a number of seniors that ride. I think, Trevor, what were you saying, that we've averaged about 10 to 12 riders a day?
I'd say more than that.
More than it? Okay.
15, 20.
So 15 to 20, it's a pretty good number. When you take a look at the seating here, we've got 4 seats on that side. We have 3 seats right here. And then we have another 4 bench seats where I'm sitting. Right down here is where we have the accessibility for a wheelchair. And if there is a wheelchair rider, it does limit the space for ambulatory riders, but that's okay right now. This was not intended to be a large vehicle. It can
Hey,
carry up to
Scott?
11. Oh, yes, go ahead. Oh,
Allie, you're muted.
Can't hear whoever's asking me.
Sorry, that was my fault. How far up is the step from like the sidewalk to, or the road, like up and into the vehicle?
It is pretty close to what a regular step would be, I believe 8 or 9 inches.
Okay, so not like it's massive. That's good.
No, yeah, it is good. And again, even if somebody was not in a wheelchair and was not in a walker, but didn't feel comfortable in stepping up, that ramp can be engaged to help them.
Sure, that's awesome.
So now we're on our way back from the Y, continuing on the loop. The sensors will automatically read the stoplights here at Wiper Avenue and Orchard. Had it been green, it would have been able to proceed straight through, but now it's sensed that the yellow and subsequent red have come, and it'll sit here and wait. Every stop that we get to that we have to turn in, it will wait until the operator sees that oncoming traffic is not going to inhibit the progress of the shuttle. So there is a lot of quick manual, not necessarily steering, but stopping and starting opportunities that the shuttle has to go through. And I'm not certain if anyone can see it, but this stretch of roadway ahead of us has got 2 solid yellow lines, which means technically and legally, nobody should be passing us. But so far, the guys kind of have an over-under wager each day as to how many cars are going to pass us and do the illegal thing. Now I'm going to hold it up here. I don't know if you can see, but the city of White Bear has put up a sign that says "Watch for driverless vehicles." It's got that at a few different points, so it is at least alerting the community that we exist and are on the roads here. And there is, quite honestly, there is some impatience because, as you can see, I'll just hold it here. We're going at about 12 miles an hour at top speed. It ranges between 10 and 12, depending upon conditions. We're checking to see how well everyone has manicured their lawns here, and we're going to report them if they haven't. So let's check to see if anyone's not abiding by the sprinkling bans too.
Scott, does it stop anywhere other than those 3 or 4 stops? And if you live along the route, can you hop on?
No, it does not at this time. And the plan is to keep it that way because it is important to collect the same data, same stops day after day after day through all of the seasons. So eventually, if there is enough demand and it made sense that we were going to program in a different stop, let's say halfway through the year, that would have to be considered by the project managers and whether or not they felt that changing that up was worth disrupting the data that they're currently collecting.
So a couple of
Let's see,
questions.
what else can I talk about here?
Scott, can you hear me?
Yes, John. Yes.
So is this actually Nutrax's vehicle or is it on loan because for folks to get that information?
That's a great question, John. No, we do not own this vehicle. This is a project from MnDOT and AECOM and Navia. They're the ones that are taking care of the expenses of this, but we have been contracted to be the service operator of the vehicle. We store it, we charge it, we operate it daily. And I was going to mention it is on the road from Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 1:30 approximately each day.
And about how many people do pass it illegally? Rough guess.
Guys, what would you say? The question was about how many people are passing illegally. Well, I've been riding since just a little bit before our meeting started, John. And I think there's been 6 that have passed, 5 or 6. Trevor says about 10 to 15 every day.
Wow. Okay.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just point the camera back as we kind of wind things up here. John, what time is it, by the way?
It is 1 o'clock on the dot.
All right,
Ding, ding.
we'll wrap up here, but we're going to get up to one stop. In fact, do you want to override, guys, and go back to the Y, or do you have to go to the?
I can turn it around. We have to do.
Okay. Well, in the respective time, I think you guys have kind of got a good view of what this is all about. So happy to field any questions you may have as we line things up here. I try to do an abbreviated version of things.
I see Ellie went, oh, yep, your mic is live now. Go for it.
Are you gonna, do you think they will add any more in as the season goes on here? Any more loops?
Anything on with this automated vehicle?
Yeah, do you think they will add more loops in our different routes, even though they're collecting data, like as they go on through the season and they see it starting to get more attention, will they change it and add more to it? Not necessarily change that initial loop, but will they all of a sudden do a different loop and start collecting data on that?
No, at this time, it'll be staying with the same loop because they want to catch the same data day after day. Whoops, as we abruptly stopped here, it happens. They want to catch the data day after day for a complete year. So I don't foresee that they will change things, but anything's possible depending upon what's being demanded by it.
Given the abrupt stops, are there seatbelts?
Oh, yes, that protected
Okay.
me from sliding
I
off.
assume so, but I thought I would verify that.
Did you also say there's tie downs for wheelchairs on the, or not?
Yeah,
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
yes, there is. There are the two you see there for the back of a wheelchair, and then there's two up front. So this vehicle could accommodate one wheelchair at a time.
Okay. Anything from the staff on the vehicle that they want to let folks know about?
Trevor, Randy, anything that you'd like to be on camera for? Locally?
Not that I can think of. Yeah, questions.
Yeah, if
All
there
right.
are questions, again, I'm still happy to field those.
Lynn, did you have something? No. Well, thank you, everybody. It's Trevor and who else is there in the vehicle with you?
Trevor here.
Yep.
And Randy.
All right. Thank you and thanks Scott for being our man in the field with a camera and great. I thought it actually worked pretty well.
Yeah, it did.
And
I was afraid that I may lose signal somewhere along the line, but we got lucky.
yep. And Andy's already left us, but we'll be thanking him as well. And just the next, as I said, the next two things are going to be Lynn is going to be on October 12th at noon.
Yep, please join us. Me and my coworker Carolyn Claver, she's our dementia specialist. And an RN, she'll be presenting along with me, and we'll get you all in the know about some tips around having dementia-friendly environments. Yeah, thanks, John.
Good. And then on September 14th at 8:30 in the morning, I'll be doing a brief update on a little bit about Micah, a tiny bit, but the Purple Line Bus Rapid Transit and having a little bit of a discussion about how that is working for folks. And I think that's about it. So thanks for getting over the hump of hump day together. It's theoretically downhill from here, is that correct? Or on the downward coast. We're coasting into the weekend. All right. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John. Thank y'all.